I want to do a great job to honor God in communicating his word, because this is challenging in the Western hemisphere. So I thought that what I would do would to give you my conclusion before I even make the introduction. Will you let me do that this morning? I want to give you the end of the message, in case some of y'all fall asleep, right? Let me give you the end. Listen to my closing. Technically, in Scripture, luxury isn't wrong, but the pursuit of luxury can lead to wrongdoing. Luxury possesses spiritual danger when it leads towards idolatry. Unbridled materialism functions like an addictive substance, building up tolerance until spending no longer satisfies, leading people to accumulate beyond their means while feeling empty despite constant consumption. You guys don't know anything about that, right? Constant consumption can undermine spiritual development by redirecting the attention towards ever more material acquisitions. We don't think like that, do we? Moving towards spiritual maturity demands intentional choices. Shifting from consumption to contentment and filling oneself with spiritually significant things rather than material accumulation. True spiritual discernment rejects luxury as a standard of value, replacing it with service to God and responsibility to people as the measure of what truly matters. And I almost can take my seat. But I need to tell you more about this discipline of frugality. And the book of James is just the right place to do it. Let me tell you something about James. You guys know he's the half-brother of Jesus, right? He's the kid, the younger brother of Jesus that grew up in that household with him. He's the guy who felt like Jesus is, he's ridiculous. The guy is he's just too good. He doesn't mess up. Always making his bed. Always cleaning up the house. Whatever mom says, let's do it, guys. No, let's go the opposite way. Jesus wouldn't do it. James writes this book to confront the dangers of a religion that only has external Christian forms, but lacks the strength of consistent moral integrity. He's writing to compound this concept that we can just do whatever. And so he writes because he's come to the conviction in his life, he's not just my big brother, but he is the Son of God who died and was raised from the dead. And I see him for who he is now. And so he writes this book based on the groundwork for real, genuine renewal being possible in the lives of every believer. The central message in James is simply this: genuine faith in Christ as Lord. The idea of being saved should lead or result in the life of obedience to Christ, not just some religious concepts. It boils down to what you believe being applied in your life. My God, help me to do this today. If what you believe does not convict you, you better question your faith. You ought to question it. James is called James the Just because he stands on this principle that the hearer of God's word must become a doer of God's word. You can't just simply hear it. You have to have the conviction to apply it. So in chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, he talks about being materialistic as a child of God in this world. In verses 7 through 11, he talks to his readers about being patient. In verse 12, he tells some of the folk in the congregation, stop swearing. I need help. Man, stay with me, Lord. In verses 13 through 18, he tells the rest of them, listen, pray. Pray. Ask God for what you need. Pray about it, and then believe that God hears you and will answer. And there's the great thing about the book of James. He closes in verses 19 and 20 with this thought. He tells them, keep bringing people back to the truth. Keep leading them back around because we go astray sometimes, but don't give up on one another. Don't give up. Jesus died for that brother. He died for that sister. Stand up, speak the truth, and encourage others to live it out. So in these first 6 verses of chapter 5, we're talking about frugality. You find the word living luxuriously in verse 5. Frugality just simply means this. It means to be careful with your money. You don't have to buy everything you see on TV. They lying to you. I want you to know that. I'm saying that publicly. Because that new car you get, as soon as you drive off that lot, it went like this. The value starts going down. Avoid waste, frugality would teach you. Avoid waste. And then value simplicity. There is something spiritual about simplicity. However, the word luxuriously in verse 5 simply means to indulge in luxury, live in pleasure. And I like this third definition. It means to live softly. See, I think that's the problem in the Western Hemisphere. We done got soft. Don't look at me like that. We've gotten soft. We live soft. There's a verse up here in Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 18. I want to contrast and compare this idea of what it means to be able to be frugal versus living lavishly or in luxury in the concept. In Isaiah 3:18, the writer describes the luxurious jewelry and clothing that the women in Jerusalem, especially the high society women in Jerusalem, were wearing just before the Babylonian invasion. They lived high. They dressed well. They looked good. And they showed off what they had. They wore it with great pride right up until the point when the Babylonian army comes in and all the gold, all the silver, all the riches, all the fine clothes get stripped away. And they're left in life with none of the things that high society people thought were of the greatest value. But I don't want you to get the wrong understanding. In the book of Exodus chapter 28 and verse 2, Moses is instructed by God to make the priestly garments, the robe for Aaron, the high priest of the time. He gives him instructions on how to make these high priestly garment and to make them what he called beautiful and glorious in those priestly clothes. If you go back and you look in the book of Revelations and you get a glimpse of heaven, God understands beauty. He understands luxury, but never luxury, beauty, or things above the value of spiritual life. Never, never. So in this study of frugality, we're going to talk a little bit about human tendencies and behavior. And I want to talk about them because these types of behavior lead to spiritual ineffectiveness, and in some cases, even self-destruction. Some of you know that because you face bankruptcy. Some of you know this because you've had bill collectors call your house. You understand that feeling of being in bondage and debt that's like strangling, like a chokehold. Frugality is simply the abstinent discipline of using money or goods only for soul gratification. These are the things you want to look out for. If the money is just about social status, you got a problem. If it's only about glamour or luxury, there is a spiritual conflict, James would be telling us in a moment. The practice of frugality is the spiritual discipline to live within the boundaries of simply good judgment. you don't have to wear everything to indicate how much you have. You know, I have some jewelry, but the only thing that I have of value that I wear constantly is the wedding band that my wife bought me. Really, that's really about the only thing. I have some other jewelry, but this is about the only thing I really value. Matter of fact, we're getting to that time where it's probably, a good time to start cashing some of that stuff in. Gold done went way up. I need to get rid of some of that stuff. Yeah. Here's a concept. Here's a concept I want to challenge you with. This is how things work over history. Throughout history, governments, the American government, world governments, people all over the world, have used and imposed a concept called sumptuary laws. And in these sumptuary laws, they establish order by simply saying, we don't want certain types of behavior. So we will employ these laws, these sumptuary laws, to control alcohol consumption, drug use and abuse, or even prostitution. And that's great. Sounds right. Except governments have also used sumptuary laws to enforce social status distinctions between the rich and the poor, and use it to keep the poor and in their place, and the status of nobility high, where poverty and the lack of substance or certain things would be, that's your lot in life. Stay there. Stay in your place. In sumptuary laws, it would have been illegal for poor people to have the types of clothes, even the certain colors, and certainly fabrics that noble people would wear. It would be illegal for a poor person to have these items. You would be in trouble. They would look at you and know, oh, you shouldn't have that. Where'd you steal that from? That was not for you. That's for these people, not for you. Find that hard, don't you? Hard to believe. We live in a country where it is at least stated in our moral code that everybody has both the civil and God-given right to pursue pleasure and the things that you would like as a personal right, and no one enforcing laws to keep you from having certain things that you could afford. But that's not the case throughout history. In verse 1, let me read verses 1 and 2 again to you in James 5. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries which are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. These are strong words to rich people, powerful people. But I got news for you. His words weren't because they were rich. It was because they chose to live with frivolous consumption and fell horribly short of service to others. Here's the problem. It wasn't that they had money. Money's not the problem. It was not because they were rich, but when the scale of balance is laid out with what I have, what did I do with it? Did I simply lavishly lay it all over myself or all over my wife or all of my children to the neglect of everyone else around me? Verse 5 simply says, you have lived luxuriously on the earth and led a life of wanton pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. And I want you to keep this in mind. He's writing to a group of people who've been scattered. But trouble has a way of finding you wherever you're at. And what they don't know is what's coming is a growing world government that's going to absolutely destroy Jerusalem. Going to send everybody into exile and tear down the temple, the great place of worship. Tear it down. There'll be nothing left, and everyone will be scattered. You see, sometimes we live for today without looking toward tomorrow. But I got news for you. Tomorrow's coming. Tomorrow is coming. So in this context, the pursuit of pleasure corrupts and undermines the soul of a person. Luxury prevents the human spirit from connecting with God in genuine worship and potentially inflicts physical and spiritual harm on others. Because James says there were people who worked for you and you didn't pay them. There were people who worked for you and the wage that you paid them was not a living wage while you lived in luxury. You weren't fair. You didn't treat people right. And all those poor people could do was pray. I got news for you. God listens. God listens to the prayers of his people. James is saying that there are times when luxury and spirituality are economically and socially dangerous. When luxury is king. When luxurious living is the standard. God listens to the cry of his people. These are those kind of times when a believer, I think James is getting to, would have to evaluate, how am I living? What am I doing with what I have? What I have is what God blessed me with. How am I applying that blessing in my life? And so there are times, I think, if you allow me to stretch out and step out a little bit, there are times I think the discipline, the spiritual discipline that we talked about of fasting can be applied even to spending. Be with me today, Lord. The spiritual discipline of fasting can be applied to spending. And maybe just not all spending. You know, you still got to put gas in your vehicle to get back and forth to work. But the extravagant purchases when everybody else around you lives in poverty. Sometimes people are barely getting by, living on nothing while they exist in the richest nation in the world. Jesus made the comment, the poor you have with you always, and that is still true. But I would ask you, because this is how James in the book is written, he's speaking to his readers to get a response. This is not just the dissemination of information for intellectual purposes. This is revelation, and the question is, what will you do? What kind of act of kindness? What kind of act of service to the poor have you rendered lately? You see, the scriptures teach that the proper worship of God is always accompanied by service to people. That's my dilemma in all of this messages. We've turned worship into an entertainment experience. When worship is about coming before God and humbling ourselves before him and getting inspiration about who he wants me to be and what he wants me to do and how can I change these flaws and these attitudes and these habits and these fears. How do I break out of these chains and become the man or the woman God's calling me to be? The discipline of frugality will free you from the pursuit of the things that don't pay spiritual dividends and liberate you to learn how to worship God and worship God through serving people. And there is great spiritual wealth. Let me share this with you. You'll find this in the book of Micah in chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. The question gets asked, all right, Lord, what do you want? What do I need to do? What shall I come to the Lord? With what shall I come to the Lord? And bow myself before the God on high. Shall I come to him with burnt offerings? With yearling calves? Does the Lord take delight in thousands of rams? In tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I present my firstborn for my rebellious acts? The fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? What does God require of me? Micah said, he already told you. He told you, old man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. What is it that you're doing in your religion that does not impact your life? You ought to unload that good religion and leave it where it's at. You picked it up in the closet. You picked it up off the street. Dump that stuff immediately. He says to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. That means get on your spiritual journey. Take off those religious clothes. This is exactly what Jesus told Martha. You remember Jesus goes to Martha's house, and Martha gets busy. Martha's cleaning, getting stuff dusted off, cooking greens, and she couldn't cook no pork. Couldn't do no pork. but she started cooking and cleaning and getting busy, and Mary, her sister, is not helping. Mary's over here sitting down while Martha's over here doing all the work. Y'all know that feeling, right? My wife always coming up with plans around the house for me. And I look around. Where are you? Go ahead, young man, go ahead. Luke 10:42. But only one thing is necessary. Just one thing. For Mary, Jesus says, has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. What's the good part? Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus while Jesus speaks. Mary is gleaming from him the revelation of heaven and being transformed in her life. Mary's spiritual closet is being cleaned. Mary's life is being restored. Mary's heart is being filled. Jesus said that is the only thing that is necessary. That's the only thing. I can smell Calvary's chicken, so let me quickly get out of this. Second Sundays is hard. Romans 13, verses 7 and 8. Here's a challenge. I want you to consider the thought. The caption here is the idea of a debt that's owed. What's the debt that I owe, Pastor? Come on, help me get this understanding. What do I do with all this information? Paul put it like this in Romans chapter 13, verse 7 and 8. Render to all what is due them. Tax to whom tax is due. Custom to whom custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. Owe nothing to anyone except love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. He talks about 4 examples of things. The idea of the word owed is ophelia. It means there are four things that will give us the meaning of this word. 4 examples. 2 of them are monetary, have to do with money. 2 of them are abstract, okay? So I want to go back into verse 7, and I want to look at these 4 things. He says, owe no man anything. But he says, taxes. These are government-imposed taxes. And just to be clear, these are Roman government taxes that are imposed upon the people. He says, pay your taxes. Come on now, look up at me. Ain't nobody here struggling with that, all right? You running from the tax man? Help me today, Lord. He talks about different types of taxes. He talks about the idea here of the custom of tax. This is the custom taxes. These are things that are customary, normal, generally acceptable. Property taxes. Taxes on goods and services that are rendered. You go to Walmart, you buy your stuff, you're going to pay sales tax, right? Don't go in there protesting that they shouldn't be charging you no sales tax. You're going to get arrested. Just going to do like you've been doing. Pay the taxes. Here's another tax that was applied in the first century that you know well now. It's the same principle that you see. Anybody ever rode on Beltway 8? Be with me. I got me somebody in the back there. That's right. Yeah, you ever been on the Tardy Toll Road? You have paid poll taxes. And you just got that little thing on your windshield so that they can be scanned as you go through. They don't even make you stop anymore. But when you pass through, you pay your taxes. They get that money. Customary, 21st century, still doing the same stuff. Here are the two abstract areas of responsibility. He says fear. It's the Greek word phobos. It refers to emotion or alarm or danger in anticipation of a negative experience. Here's what you should feel if you don't pay your taxes. Somebody is going to come and get you. You might be in the grocery store and come out and there'll be somebody standing next to your car. You get on the toll road and you don't have something right in your account. And you keep going through, but you don't fix that account. At some point, a police officer is going to pull you over, write you a ticket. It is the fear or the anticipation of a negative experience of not paying what you owe. Somebody's going to come to collect. And you like this. Is it today? I need help. Y'all pray with me. Here's the fourth one. Here's the fourth abstract concept here. Honor. Honor, he says. It's the word time. It means to value the repayment of money. Because when you have the ability to pay what you owe, it's the idea of personal dignity. I feel better about myself if I can get that weight off of my shoulder, and it restores personal dignity. To live in a scenario where I'm not being haunted and tormented by those who are pursuing me for the payment of what I owe. Here's another category. Financial debt that we get ourselves into, because frugality is important. Financial debt is simply spiritual bondage. That's the bondage that the discipline of frugality can get you out of. This kind of debt occurs when you simply buy things that oftentimes are not necessary, but you just can't stand it. You just can't look away. You can't turn home shopping off. Be with me, Lord. You just gotta, yes. And then it doesn't feel bad because, it ain't like you went out nowhere. Just something automatically shows up at the door. And it's all right as long as your husband, like me, ain't the one standing there. Where'd this come from? I'm going to get in trouble. Listen to me. Debt is slavery that diminishes one's self-worth. Because when you are in debt, you become a slave to the lender. That's Proverbs 22:7. You are in bondage. And somebody's holding debt over your head. I got to get out of this. You'll see a slide behind me of 2 silver denarii. Should be a slide of coins, absolutely. One coin, 1 silver denarii would have been considered the day's wage for a laborer. That's what they got if they were paid. In Luke chapter 7 and verses 41 and verse 42, 2 laborers owe a debt. One owes a debt of 50 denarii, another one owes a debt of 500 denarii. And the money lender decided to have mercy. And he forgave the debt of both men. And here's what's of value. It wasn't just that he forgave the debt, but the debt for these men, they had gotten so deep in debt, it's what is called an insurmountable amount to repay. So they have borrowed their way into slavery. And there was no way out. He forgives the debt. I want you to hear about another debt. This is the historical unpayable debt. Paul taught this to the Colossian church. You'll find it in chapter 2, verse 14. He called it the certificate of debt. This is known as a debt that is unpayable. And every human being born in this world through the womb of a woman owed this debt. It's the sin debt that you could not physically pay on your own. You came into this world a debtor, a sinner, a slave to sin, and you could not, I could not, we could not pay our sin debt. Listen to how Paul put it in verse 14, speaking of Jesus. Having canceled out the certificate of debt, consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. He took your unpayable debt with him to the cross at Calvary. And when he says it's finished, your debt was paid. Your debt. Paul would say the only debt that you owe is to love somebody. If you want to be in debt, be indebted to those that need help. Be indebted to those who are discouraged. Be indebted to those who are in despair. Be in debt to those who are mourning. Care about people, because that is what he did for you and me. Here's James' applicational principle, put in my words. Pay your bills, people. Pay your bills. Start paying those spiritual bills. Help somebody with whatever God has blessed you with. Find a mark in your life that you can love. Find somebody that God allows to come across your path that you can lift up, that you can encourage, that you can mend. Find somebody. And you know what I ask you to do if you find somebody and you start ministering to people? Call it worship. Call that worship. Call putting aside certain financial things aside so that when the opportunity comes to invest in someone, you can say that I've determined to worship the Lord my God out of what he's invested in me.